Oh my God.
All right, and if you stuck this long with the unofficial commentators, you can see that we have a special guest. Straight from the bloody elbow, we have Victor Rodriguez. Dagoberto has been joining me all show, and we're just going to talk a little bit about, some of the combat sports, man. Victor, for those that don't know you, tell them where to follow you. Tell them, how they can get to know your talent.
Yeah, well, I don't know if talent is necessarily the best way to put it. You're definitely bound for a lot of disappointment, so you can definitely look forward to that. Yeah, I do currently write for bloodyelbow.com. As I like to say, it is the finest combat sports website on the planet. Fine cast of characters there, providing a lot of content, mostly for MMA, but we do also go off into the realms of competitive grappling as well as some boxing and other martial arts news of interest. Other than that, I'm available on Twitter at Vic M. Rodriguez. Once again, Vic M. Rodriguez. It's not just fight stuff there. That's my personal thing. There is a lot of fight content there as well, but, you might have your timeline will probably be choked up with a lot of political or funny or just Colombian women twerking, that kind of thing. So it is what it is.
Aim low, ladies and gentlemen, aim low.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
All right.
I think Vic also has a podcast too, so you might want to plug that in too.
Yeah, it's a personal podcast. It's the Bodega Superstar. I haven't updated the website in a while, bodegasuperstar.com, but yeah, it's available on iTunes and Stitcher, and there's no fight content there at all. It's mostly matters of social interest, to put it that way, and pretty good shit there. We're going to have some pretty interesting guests lined up within the next week or so as well. So I can't exactly comment on who, but there may be someone from the fight world related here. That would be a bit of a surprise if I'm able to get that. So we're going to see what happens.
So by all means, guys, watch the Bodega Superstar. Follow Victor on his Twitter at the Vic M. Rodriguez. But that's not what you came for, man. You didn't come just here to plug. We're going to talk some actual combat sports. I know Dago has a whole line of questioning he wants to do there. He fancies himself an interrogator. Dago, why don't you kick it off?
All right. So thank you for passing the ball on to me. So yeah, we wanted to touch up on UFC. So as you guys know, recently the John Jones problem has dominated the tabloids, let's say, and it's caused a little stir because the first sample of his blood testing came out positive for steroids. And then there was the whole talk about the second one being the better one. He was going to prove that he wasn't using anything then, but then it came out.
Dago, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we wanna spit straight facts here, right? So it wasn't a blood test.
Right.
We've covered before on the show that the drug is only tested or only proven positive through urine. Right. So he actually had a blood test, and the blood test said he was clean. Now. I don't know what to do with this situation. I don't understand why the situation is still going on. And maybe Victor can help me understand. If he still has anything to claim, anything to say about trying to prove his innocence, then why did they strip him of the title? Why was it re-awarded to DC? And why are we just moving forward this like the fight never happened?
Well, the problem is that these are stipulations based mostly on the consequences of the B sample being tested. Now, basically what happens is this. They take two samples, right? Or rather, they test two samples. Like they take a quantitative amount of blood and urine, They keep that sample handy. They're able to retest it in case there's any sort of contamination or anything along those lines, and they can store that and have it checked on up to maybe, say, 10 years. So they will be able to retroactively look back, say, 4 or 5 years from now and retest samples in case some other substance surfaces that they're able to detect in a better manner, and they're able to sift through that. But that notwithstanding, the main point here is this. Jones had a failure of his A sample. He was able to at least plead his case and see what happened with the B sample. Once that sample was retested, it was found that was also containing the substance here, turinabol. And basically, at that point, he is essentially guilty. Now, there is an appeals process. It's a lengthier thing, and I'm sorry?
They're not taken at separate times, so what on earth makes anyone think that the B sample would say anything different?
No, it's exactly, and the thing is, it is all entirely taken at the same time. But the problem is, testing it one more time is a matter of verifying and making sure that you're not unjustly or unfairly castigating a fighter or an athlete based on an erroneous result or anything of that sort. So that's really the main point of testing it again, just to be absolutely sure. That's part of the process. Yeah, I mean, unless he's going to claim that this was a tainted supplement situation, like as we saw with Tim Means or Yoel Romero, we saw that in those instances they were able to prove that there was a supplement that they were taking that had a substance that was banned, that was not listed on the packaging, and that was through this entire situation not their fault, and they were able to get a reduced suspension. With Jones, it's a bit different, given the fact that he had the thing with the dick pills and all that last time around, and it's going to look mighty suspect. I don't know how that's really going to fly, but really, it's kind of over. Now it's a matter of just seeing what the commission and what USADA decide to hand down. He's looking at a maximum of up to 4 years out of commission if he's found to be guilty by both the California State Athletic Commission as well as the USADA guidelines.
All right, so this brings me to a question that I had already in the chamber. So if John Jones already had a problem with drugs in general, and that started with the whole cocaine, the hit and run, and all that stuff. So why bother? Why bother? Because he's just, for the longest, he's just bringing up problems, and he's not even putting up what he's supposed to bring to the table, which is more viewers, more money, more promotion, and all that. Why bother with him?
I absolutely disagree. He brought so many more eyes to this last event that he was a part of. If anything, that's the only event this year that's been worth a damn.
Look, I have to sort of agree and disagree with both of you on this here, and the reason why is this. Now, what you just mentioned here was, this was the probably the most complete event that we've had, but it was also stacked to high heaven. I mean, you had Cerrone versus Lawler on that card. You had a couple of really good fights that were able to attract most of the hardcore fans to really give them, throw them a very...
On paper, yes, but...
On paper, no,
yeah.
You're right. But, I mean, that's what we buy. Because every event that you buy is a roll of the dice. We've seen many cards that have been, on paper, have looked disastrous. And then, they actually turn out either being not bad or actually, in some cases, pretty damn good. But it's always hit or miss with this stuff. I mean, that's just a fight game. But as far as what to do with John Jones, you can't cut him. They're not going to do that. There's still a lot of money to be made. And as far as the drug test in the past, okay, he crashed his car. That's not really anything that has to do with drugs. That's a behavior thing. The cocaine, that's not something that should have been tested for in the first place, because that was not under the purview of the performance-enhancing drug testing that was supposed to be taking place. So I kind of have to discount that out of hand. Now, what we really do need to focus on is, again, the situation with the dick pills and now this thing here with the turinabol. And frankly, I'm not really sure what they can do. I guess all really we can do is wait to see what kind of punishment he's going to get and then be able to make strides from there. But other than that, he's going to be held down in this UFC contract until basically until the end of his career. Yeah, I mean, they're not going to let him walk unless they want to let him go to Ryzen or something like that and fight twice a year in Japan, fighting some 500-pound ogre. I don't really see what else they can do. And they're not going to be that generous.
All right.
Well, thanks for the question, Dago.
My question.
That was fantastic. A great contribution. I have a serious question for you,
Thank
Victor.
you.
Here,
Hey,
what's your opinion, man, on the UFC putting up such lackluster events? I'm sorry, I've been drinking.
well, yeah, no, here's a problem with that, man. I mean, I'm sure they would love to put on better events, but the problem is that they've hamstrung themselves and they serve too many masters at this point. All right. Now you got to look at the product as a whole. You have the upper echelon, which is the pay-per-view events, right? Then you have towards the middle, you have like the Fight Pass events at this point. They used to be more at the bottom of the ladder, but they're more like, Now you have the Fox Sports 1 events down at the bottom, and, those are pretty much run-of-the-mill. As I always say almost every week, it's where the sausage is made. It's moving the divisions up and down. This is how you create a highlight reel, separate people, and get the rankings going in order for you to be able to see those higher events and get excited for those guys as you watch them mature. I think at the point of having, number one, they've allowed a lot of this stuff to stagnate. They allowed some of their older fighters to pretty much, they've hung on to them so much and for so long that they haven't really.
They let the older fighters get old.
Well, it wasn't. I mean, they're going to get old regardless. But the thing is, you're not exactly cultivating enough for the fans to really care. Conor McGregor has been such a sensation. He's been such a transcendent figure. But the UFC has promoted him well because they've had the wind at their backs, and that's the only way they know how to operate. They're not good at taking someone from scratch and saying, "Okay, we're going to push this guy to the moon, and we're going to show his talent and let this guy really shine." Like Demetrius Johnson, for example, would be a great case of someone who they really could have done a lot, and really pains me that they could make so much money, but they're not doing so because of their own intransigence and all that. So instead, they decide to bank on younger, more marketable fighters on a cross-platform level, like Paige Van Zant and Sage Northcutt, and they start losing fights. It's a very strange thing because we're entering this new corporate UFC era, where even they're into this uncharted territory. They're not really sure where to go or how to do it. And I don't think there's no real easy answers for this because not all fighters are the same. We got William Morris purchasing the UFC, and everyone's going, oh, they're going to go Hollywood. They're going to have fighters doing TV shows and movies. Not everybody's going to be able to do that, guy. So it's just not going to happen. So, they're spreading themselves thin, and I think that's really been the biggest factor. And the fact that also they've been willing to part with a lot of other talent in order to save money. Gegard Mousasi, they let that guy walk to Bellator, a guy who could potentially be champion in the UFC. So, that would also be something that contributes to them having cards that are less than stellar.
We got to let him go. I mean, Mousasi, we need champions, and I'm sorry, this might sound ignorant, but we need champions that speak English. I mean, Gegard Mousasi, with his accent, not really being able. Hey, listen, not really being able to promote himself. Get out of here.
Okay.
What the hell are you talking about? Not being able to promote himself isn't doing much. And then you touched on it, but I want to ask you the straightforward question: why can't UFC make stars?
Okay, but Anderson Silva was a tremendous champion, and he was an underground sensation. He didn't make it to this.
Anderson Silva was, at least in my opinion,
he was already developed. So the point Jay's trying to make is, how come they can't develop a fighter? Like, they're trying to Paige Van Zant and the other guy, and that's pretty much failing for them.
Well,
why is it that they keep bringing up a guy from scratch?
Van Zant and Northcutt, at least in my opinion, I'm a fan. I mean, Victor may follow more closely because he writes about it. But as a fan, I see them as people that look like fighters, but they're not very complete. And I have a question here that I wanted to get to. I don't know if we're ready to move on from why they can't make fighters, but I have this theory that there's just so much parity in fighting nowadays. It's not like it was before. You don't see straight up fights of striker versus grappler, or jiu-jitsu versus boxing, or kickboxing for that matter. It's like everyone knows a little bit of everything. So the only way that you win fights these days is just by being lucky, just getting that lucky break.
No, I don't think so. I think you just find an inefficiency and just try to gain an advantage at some point. But it's not getting lucky. I don't think getting lucky
has 800 coaches. All of these UFC gyms have gone mainstream. They have a coach for everything, for boxing, for grappling, for wrestling. So everyone knows a little bit of everything. Yes, you might have come in with one initial discipline, just about every fighter knows a little bit of everything. You're not gonna go head first into some
But
guy
you're
who,
supposed to know. You're supposed to know a little bit of everything because this is
but
MMA. You're
but that
supposed
that
to dominate at least a little
that
bit.
wasn't the case before.
So the disadvantage between a boxer and a grappler would be like enormous,
That wasn't the
and
case
it would be
before.
a ridiculous fight.
Yep, that wasn't the case before, and this is why I believe in its beginnings, more people were interested. They wanted to know which was the most dominant discipline. And when it
Mm,
seemed like it was, a lot of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu was winning back in the Royce Gracie days, a lot of people went over and started studying this stuff because it looks like the most dominant of the disciplines.
right,
So
but
that's
you
how you
have
find
to.
an advantage. You find the inefficiency in something. You find a weakness, you attack it, and everybody pretty much is gonna follow. That's
It's
in the strategy. That's something that everybody does.
well, I think we need to
I
take
don't
a
think
step
that's
back, though. We need to look at this from a different perspective, in the sense that the early UFC events, what you mentioned, like the boxer versus the kickboxer, or the sumo wrestler versus the, I don't know, the guy who plays with fidget spinners, whatever the fuck, right? When you look at that kind of situation, that was not so much a sport as it was a competition of let's see. I mean, it was an experiment, and it was also in a more underhanded manner, what was known as the Gracie infomercial. I mean, it was done in conjunction with Rorion Gracie as a means to promote Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and specifically his family style of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So
True.
now from there on, you have to evolve, right? When you end up to the point where, like, I think it was UFC 7 or 9, where Marco Ruas was there, Marco Ruas wasn't just a grappler. He was a guy who knew Muay Thai. So now he's not just coming in with Jiu-Jitsu, because guys are going to come in thinking, okay, well, obviously I can't let this get to the ground. Well, you're not going to have a choice, because that guy is going to leg kick you to death, and you're going to have to go to the ground. And you continue and continue, and things will evolve. So now it's not what it was then. So, I mean, you can't even wear the gi anymore. That should tell you right there that there's a degree of evolution. You can't wear wrestling shoes. You have to wear the uniform level of gloves, the 4 ounces. So, I don't know if it's a really valid question in the sense of, well, things aren't what they used to be. They never will. Now you just have to look at finding the evolution of skill and what the next step is going to be. And not only that, but looking at the brilliance of the talent that you currently have. Like, for example, Damian Maia is a jiu-jitsu guy, but man, he is an otherworldly jiu-jitsu guy. What he's doing is absolutely beautiful, and he's doing it to guys that know jiu-jitsu as well. So, I mean, is that really? You look at a wrestle boxer like Tyron Woodley. He's not a wrestle boxer in the same mold as, I don't know, Jacob Volkman. So again, it's a matter of looking at the differences, and appreciating what's out there when it's really on an upper level of talent.
Hey, they're all, to me,
That's fine.
in a large percentage the same. Like everyone is so much the same that you can match up a number 5 ranked fighter with a number 13, and any given day the number 13 wins, and then you have a mess where you don't know where to go next for your title fight. So you keep recycling the same 3 or 4 people in your title picture. All of these title pictures, at least in the UFC, they just seem stagnant. Nothing is happening. Same people, and no new guy can break
Okay,
in.
but that depends. That depends on the division, though. I mean, when you look at, for example, a division like heavyweight, or no, I'll do you one better: light heavyweight. You only really had 4 people as part of the elite in that division: Gustafsson, Rumble Johnson, John Jones, and Daniel Cormier.
Correct.
Now, John Jones might not come back ever, and if he does come back, it's going to be a while. Rumble Johnson just retired, so now you really only have those 2 at the top. And after that, the cutoff is so insane. Maybe Volkan Ozdemir may grow into something else. But again, it's an untested and unproven talent. It depends on what division you're referring to, and it really matters on what. I think what you're trying to get at is that there's a lot of people fight with the same style, maybe, or they use a similar approach when it comes to winning fights. Is that what you're maybe getting to?
There is no one disciplined fighter anymore. Not even a 1-2. Like everyone just knows everything. Any one of those mainstream gyms, they do it all. There's like 1 or 2 people I can name, on one hand, who really stands out. A style like a Dominic Cruz, that really stands out. That you're not going to see from just about anyone. A style like Demetrius Johnson, just the output. Some of the ladies, Jen Jacek, just some crazy stuff. But other than that, like everyone just, oh, John Jones, I can't leave him out. Everyone
No.
else just is just a package, whether to X degree or not. They just know everything. There's parity. Like every other sports wants that. They want the parity. They want it to where you can any team, for example, if we're talking NFL, they say that that one has the highest level of parity. Any team can win the championship any given year, right? But I don't think you want to see that in combat sports. You want to see some kind of dominance, and it just seems like the guys that win, they just keep winning, beating the same guys, and no one is breaking through because they're all in the same mold.
I don't know if that's actually. I don't know that I would actually say that, especially when it comes to people training at the same gym. I mean, you look at a team like Jackson Winklejohn. So many people train there, but at the same time, Carlos Condit does not fight the way John Jones does, who doesn't fight the way Holly Holm does. Even like Team Alpha Male, which is mostly known for being a bunch of wrestle boxers, Cody Garbrandt does not fight the way Uriah Faber used to fight, or the way that Gregor Gillespie, who just fought last week. I mean, that guy's a fucking buzzsaw, and very few guys at that gym fight like him. So I don't know if it's just a matter. I think there's more a matter of sameness. Number one, because of the uniforms and the way that there's a lack of promotion, and number two, fan perspective becomes skewed due to the fact that there's an oversaturation of events. Things start to seem a lot less special when you have one event after the other. I mean, look at what Bellator was doing a couple of years ago when they had the tournament format and the weekly show. It wasn't fight events. It was essentially as if it were a reality series, except without the reality TV show drama. They'd have the smaller packages introducing you to the fighters and explaining who they were and some of their backgrounds. Cut brief, then to the cage. And it was just week after week after week. And there was no real degree of expectation, or there's no suspense. There's no tension built.
It's a little bit exhausting if you see it.
Right. Yeah. And that's just.
You want to see a little bit of space. I get
right.
that, because that's one of the things that turned me off a little bit from UFC. Because at the beginning there were I think the 3 month separation between pay-per-views.
Yeah,
and that was great.
Yeah, but you're talking about
every
like
3 months
in the 90s, man. Like
yeah, but
even
see
early
2000s.
Yeah.
I understand. You see my point. It started out cool because everybody would get together. It was special. It was like a thing. You every 3 months you would go to some bar or some sports bar or somebody's house and watch the pay-per-view, and that was awesome. But then they got FS1, and then they got Spike, and then it was like every week, and then it got exhausting because you needed to follow so many people, and it loses especially to me.
Well, now you have Fox Sports 1 and Fight Pass, and oh wait, there's a pay-per-view, and oh wait, there may be 2 pay-per-views in a month, and now, for at least for us who live in either the U.S. or Canada or Australia, it's exhausting to see how much money we have to throw at this sport in order to be like, you got to be a loyal motherfucker to buy every single one, or maybe you're someone who has to write about it, and you're sitting there with your Mario and Yoshi shirt wondering what the fuck went wrong with your life. I don't know. You tell me how the fuck that happened.
Okay.
All right.
Can you tell me what I have to look forward to? Have you seen anything that it would lead you or me to come back to UFC, and not only come back but bring other people with me and say, hey, this is what you have to watch?
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. Number one, we do have that major event coming up in Madison Square Garden. You got Michael Bisping fighting George St. Pierre. Just for the sake of sheer spectacle. You have a guy who's been fighting for a long time with Michael Bisping, finally reaches the mountaintop. Call it a fluke if you want. The guy won the belt fair and square. And now he's going to be fighting a guy who's making his debut at middleweight, even though he hasn't fought in, 4 years? I know it sounds super sketchy, but the rest of the card is shaping up to be something amazing. And it's got a lot of that big card feel that we were just talking about that we very sorely missed. Not only that, but we've also got Tony Ferguson fighting Kevin Lee. That could lead to a lot of amazing consequences as well. What's going to happen next? Is Conor McGregor going to come back anytime? Maybe for a late December card. Maybe not, but maybe so. And if he does, he's going to probably have to fight one of these cats. There's the thing about what makes MMA so much fun to both cover and follow is that there's always something happening every day. Every day somebody's got an opinion, or somebody does something dumb, or someone does something really, really awesome, and you never really know in the span of a week what can happen. So I really think that they're probably going to break out of that funk right now that they've had over this whole year, and they might be able to pop out of this maybe by around late November.
It's been a really down year, at least in my opinion. Hopefully, this brings a lot of people back, man, and they just sacrificed so much to be able to perform in New York that I don't know, man. It's kind of taken away, and then these big fights, these super fights, they get promoted on such a large scale that it's like over-promising and under-deliver. I really hope this goes big. If not, man, I don't know. I think I'm going to take a bigger layoff than I've been taking recently.
Well, I'll tell you what, right now we're still with the post-Mayweather-McGregor hangover. That sucked out so much oxygen from everybody's room that, I mean, once we get past that, the further we get from that event, and the more we start seeing some of these divisions finally being more reined in and controlled, then we'll be able to see a greater degree of parity.
UFC Fight Night. So, Vic, I know you wrote an extensive article on the Bloody Elbow website. So I want you to take a small plug. I want you to give me what your opinion on what the best fight was, what the worst fight was, and as a whole, what the sport of Fight Night was. Was it a good event, or was it just a meh event?
Well, here's the thing. For a card that came in with such low expectations, and again, with that shadow that's cast over from the Mayweather-McGregor fight being so recent, I don't know that I can really, fight of the night. I ended up getting the award that was great. Two talents that a lot of people don't know, but man, especially that kid could be making waves and fighting at least for a top 10 spot very, very soon within the next year. Watching Hector Lombard get sent to the land of wind and ghosts, that was impressive. Kamaru Usman developing as another top prospect who's just blowing up the South Florida scene and now making it on a larger stage against a veteran. And eventually watching the very reviled Mike Perry still building an amazing highlight reel, and then finally watching Luke Rockhold get a win after his loss to Michael Bisping last year, maybe riding the ship a little bit in terms of the middleweight picture, even though, again, we have a bit of a logjam at the top with an interim champion and a main champion who's, that whole situation is a bit ugly, but at least there's a bit more clarity, I guess. Where's going to take some time out due to, I think it's a knee injury or hand injury. So maybe Rockhold gets to fight him, and either way, it's going to be an amazing fight because Whitaker is the absolute truth and has been a joy to watch.
What about this? I'm sorry. What about this Uriah Hall knockout? What do you think of it?
Yeah, you know what, man? Hall is very hit or miss, and literally, I mean, he's just he's either going to give you something sensational like he did at the end of that, but you have to live with the rest of that fight, which was not good. It's just him surviving or just barely eking ahead and fighting down to his opponent's level in a lot of cases. Yotko is a very good fighter, but, it just... Look, Hall's going to stay on his way. As your question as to what it was, I'd say it was actually a bit of a success. I'd say it was actually a bit of a success, a quiet success, because, again, there were lowered expectations, and they were able to at least succeed that with a lot of action.
Yeah, it was the same. It was done on the same weekend as the Triple G Canelo fight. And since we're on that subject, the much talked about Triple G Canelo fight. What is your guys' thought on that? I mean, it ended in a draw, and the one of the judges was suspended. So, what seems to be the deal there, guys? Boxing's having a problem with marketing as a whole. I mean, aside from the mega lip event that was Mayweather and McGregor, I mean, there are basically not much of a marketable fighter in boxing. So what's going on there?
That goes like 7-1. Like, where do I start answering?
There were good questions, though.
Fantastic.
One and go.
I forgot the first one already.
Focus, motherfucker, focus!
I need some goddamn animals to answer your questions.
All right, so forget about the. I mean, what do you guys think about Triple G and Canelo? What was the problem with that fight?
The problem with that fight is that it came after Mayweather McGregor. I I personally couldn't afford it. I was a little busy. I couldn't go and meet up with people that would have asked me to chip in to watch it. By the time I was on my way to the fight, I heard that it had ended and ended in a draw, and I was like, eh.
Wow.
And what does that do for boxing? I don't know. I was already down on it to begin with. I actually found the most amount of entertainment in the McGregor Mayweather fight. Like, for whatever it was worth, I've said here on the podcast that I wasn't gonna let anyone tell me how this went down. I was gonna watch it by hook or by crook. This whole thing, Canelo and Golovkin. If I was home and doing nothing else, I would have watched it. But other than that, I'm not changing my Saturday plans to go watch that fight.
Hmm.
What about you, Vic?
That's an interesting take. I mean, I don't follow boxing as closely, but I do have a great degree of reverence for it and respect. Even though it's hard for me to follow because I'm doing so much with MMA. So this fight was actually I'm kind of in the opposite situation as you because this fight interested me greatly. I had no interest whatsoever in the McGregor Mayweather fight. I still haven't seen that. I haven't had the chance to watch the Canelo Triple G fight yet. But from what I understand, it was good enough to not let the draw result spoil the fight for you. Apparently, what was there in terms of action and technique and absolute veteran savvy and skill, all that was there, and that's really all you can hope for in high-level boxing.
Well, there's one more thing I can hope for,
and
it's a decision.
Well,
Either way, we want a winner. I mean, this whole draw thing is like, what the hell's the point?
Yeah,
that's
it's really anticlimactic. But because you expected to know who the best of these two great fighters is, and a lot of people were pulling for Golovkin. I mean, I don't think Canelo is at the same level of Golovkin, but at least it would have been a more interesting fight than lip service.
Well, I'd like to know how you prove that now, since they draw it. I mean, yeah,
it's not. Yeah,
GGG
I understand.
Is better than Canelo. Well, he wasn't better enough to knock him out or decisively win. So what are we gonna do?
Well,
and I get that, but that's because of a judge, not because of the whole outcome of the fight. I mean, everybody that saw the fight could tell you that they're pretty much a lot to.
I mean, you have to have a real degree of I don't know, memory, math skills. How do you correct me if I'm wrong, but when you judge a fight, right, you put down your scores, you fold it up, you turn it in. How do you remember who you gave what round to until it's done? You're passing them in. From what I understand, also judges aren't like three guys next to each other. You can't lean over and see what this guy's writing. You're doing it from separate angles. You write what you see, and then to end up with a draw, like I don't know. I don't know why you would call this sketchy. Now the thing about me is when it comes to boxing, I've already read, maybe it is while I was researching our guest, Vic M. Rodriguez from the Bloody Elbow, that they're already in talks of a GGG Canelo rematch. I mean, really? Already? Okay, well, that's what we're looking forward to, a rematch. How do I know that this wasn't planned ahead of time? And you know what? They said this about Mayweather McGregor leading up to it. Oh, well, if Mayweather loses, then there's an obvious rematch, and that's going to make even more money. So if this is the mentality that we go into every time we go into a boxing match, I'm not looking forward to anything that I'm going to be watching.
Okay, well, there's a couple of things here that we need to know. And number one, I mean, boxing is not exactly faltering as a sport. Now, maybe to a lot of us who don't really pay attention to it, but boxing has had one of its best years in a very, very long time. In fact, the last 3-4 years have been absolutely great for boxing in terms of revenue, in terms of attendance in live events, in terms of actual stylistic matchups. Problem is, it's just not as prominently featured in, it's not a part of the social norms as it's It's exactly, and a lot of people don't follow combat sports. They can't really take watching people get punched in the face like that when against a skilled opponent. It's just not their thing, and I understand that. Not everything is for everybody. I say the same about the NBA, the NFL, about MMA in general as well. But in terms of what this particular decision does for boxing, I mean, suspect judging has always been a thing. Hashing out talks for a rematch that quickly, that's not a new thing either. That's something that just makes a lot of business sense, especially in the case of a draw. It's like, well, on paper, we can still stretch this out to see best of 3, best of 5, or whatever the hell they want to do. This doesn't really seem like something that's that unusual to me. If there's anything like a fix, or if there's any kind of shenanigans or illegality here, you only need one person to do it. It could either be the ref, it could be one of the judges, you know what I mean? It could be the guy cleaning up backstage. So I don't really know, man. I mean, we've seen incompetent judging in the past tar and ruin so many fights that this doesn't really surprise me. But in the same thing, it's like, yeah, we're so used to the idea that where there has to be a winner. And realistically, there should have been. From what I understand, Triple G should have won the fight. But again, I haven't seen it yet, so I'm not making that judgment. But if that is the case, it's kind of a shame. But yeah, they're going to go out there and make more money. And unless you're an absolute cynic and say, well, we already saw what we were going to see, a rematch isn't going to make things. It wasn't. Maybe it might not have been competitive enough to warrant a rematch in the eyes of some. So I mean, it's really up in the air. What I'd say is, don't really panic. The boxing is going to be just fine.
Yeah, I'm from a younger crowd. I didn't get sucked into boxing when I was younger or more impressionable, and right now it just seems slow. I don't care to understand the science behind it or the technique, and frankly, events like this one don't draw me to the TV.
Yeah. Well, I don't blame you. I understand that.
It's understandable. I really wanted to get you guys' perspective because I was talking to a friend, and we were talking about the exact problem that boxing, I think, faces at times in its marketability. And we thought one of the main issues is that Jay said that one time to me, and it's that they have a lot of titles. There are too many titles in the way. There's not one single organization that can just take them up and unify them.
It's the same problem that I have with soccer. I mean, soccer is a great sport. More power to those people that love and follow it. But there's just too much goddamn soccer. If I want to watch the best basketball, I go to the NBA. If I want to watch the best baseball, I go to Major League Baseball. If I want to watch soccer, they tell, like, I ask 10 different people, they'll tell me 10 different leagues and tournaments and things to follow. No one coincides on the one thing. So I just can't get drawn in it. I don't want to watch the mediocre product. I want to watch the best. Same thing happens to me with college sports. There's like, God knows how many damn universities, over 500 maybe? Too many damn teams for me to follow. I can't decide on one.
A lot of
Division 1, Division 2 is too much. Boxing, same deal. That McGregor-Mayweather main event, I saw the whole fight from the prelims leading up to the main event, and it seems like everyone that was coming to the ring was fighting for a title. How the hell is this even possible?
Yeah, well, you have different associations, WBC, WBA, yeah. So, it is a little confusing to follow. We are seeing, if it's any consolation, we are seeing more title unifications and stuff. And I mean, it's getting a little more streamlined, and it's becoming more accessible again to people. It's not like everything is on pay-per-view anymore. Although for a lot of people in the U.S., you either have to have premium cable like HBO or Showtime to really get those primo events. And one more caveat: if you really want to see the best baseball, from what I understand, it's actually taking place in Korea. But it's what I heard. I don't know.
A lot of Dominican people will digress.
Hey, listen.
You can.
Seriously speaking, we would love to have you, especially for the November main event. We'll just we'll preview it. We'll review it if we have the time, and we love talking UFC. We usually set aside a separate episode all about UFC and all that other stuff.
Bro, I'll do this shit every week. I don't give a fuck. This is great.
All right, but last one. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that one of our co-hosts is actually out, but this would have made it more fun because he loves to argue.
Oh
yeah, just because. No reason given. Just because.
Giant McGregor supporter.
Yeah. All right, finally, guys, we have wrestling, and I wanted to touch up a little bit on the current outlook of WWE. I've been listening to the ENC Pod of Awesomeness. That's Edge and Christian. That's an awesome podcast from them, and it looks like WWE is finally looking to the indies to bring up people and actually pushing them up. They have NXT. NXT as a promotion is very successful. They're bringing people from Japan, and they're doing good. So I wanted to know what you guys think. What's the progression? What's wrong with you, Jay?
Just waiting for you to finish. So what do I think about what? About NXT?
Yeah. NXT, first of all.
I love NXT. I do have one fundamental problem with it. NXT, at its core, was the developmental territory that became a TV show. But for what it's worth, they have the training center there. They have a guy who's teaching you how to do promos. They're teaching you ring work. They're teaching you all this other stuff. Yes, now they make it kind of like a minor league where they bring in talents from other places, right? Familiarize them with WWE fans, and then they get promoted to this main roster, as they call it, right? To the main roster. Yeah. That's what they mainly call it. So here's the problem that I'm having. When you're in when you're in NXT, I apologize. Everyone is at exactly the same level. So whether you win or lose or draw, it doesn't really matter. Like, there's freedom for you to do anything. And you're learning your craft, and you're cutting amazing promos, and you're getting to know your fan base. Now, the moment that you move on to the main roster, those people still see you as an undercard guy. So you put in all this hard work, and you become this amazing personality in NXT, only to move on to the main roster and be nothing more than a jobber. They've ended the careers of so many amazing performers, whether they be on the mic or in the ring, but there's just nothing for them to do once they move up to the main roster, because the main roster people are protected. You don't ever want those NXT guys beating the guys that are on top.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So you're saying that there's no really follow-up to their push-up to the major leagues.
You bring them up just to have them die.
Yeah, that sucks, because I saw that our friend Bobby Roode is a champion in NXT, and I was really excited because I thought he was gonna. I think he's an awesome wrestler, and he had a good character going, and I thought he was gonna get into the big leagues. But I saw his age. He's about pushing 40, I think, and I don't think he's gonna. He has much time to see some progress going forward.
If Hulk Hogan hadn't gone on a racist rant, he'd still be in the ring. There's no such thing as a age limit for wrestling. And he doesn't fight or he doesn't wrestle or perform at a very athletic style. He's not doing like backflips or anything. He can suplex you and put you in a figure four for the rest of his life.
Okay.
I think you mean
what do you think, babe?
No, I think you mean Ric Flair. I mean, he's the one who doesn't do the. He doesn't need to do.
Yeah, but
extraneous. I think I know what you mean. The figure four thing maybe threw me off, but yeah, it's a very complicated thing with that, because not everybody really is on the same level. In professional wrestling, some people develop faster. Like anything else, some people just get it faster than others and are able to shine. They have that natural charisma, and they're able to pick up the in-ring thing and the timing and the cues. So, I think we're seeing a lot more openness now. We saw the group that came in from Ring of Honor, and eventually now they've taken over and they've held championships and they're on top. It's not the same as it was maybe 10 years ago when I stopped watching. So, I pop my head back in every once in a while, and I actually had a good conversation with a friend of mine on his podcast, Crowd Interference, on Soundcloud. You might want to check that out too, where we discuss a lot of that stuff and sort of the differences between what wrestling was like growing up and how we're seeing that landscape evolve and change now. And even still, it's in a bit of a transition, but it's it's still fun to watch. I don't have the patience for it, but yeah, it gives me a bit of hope to look back and go, okay, they're doing a lot of good things at this point.
Yes, people. So after you listen to the unofficial commentators on SoundCloud, since you're already on the app, you might as well go
Yeah.
on and listen to Crowd Interference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Please do. Okay. So, last but not least, bit of a sad note to pass. Bobby Heenan, the famous heel manager, passed away this week. And I think Jay, in our pre-production meeting, had an interesting take on what Bobby Heenan was to WWE. Go ahead, man.
Bobby Heenan was just way ahead of his time, a bit underappreciated. Right now, the WWE is known worldwide. They'll be the first to tell you that. Every single event that they have all these broadcasters from all these different countries. So it's a shame that he didn't come at a later time where we have a lot of good athletic personnel, a lot of talent that could use a mouthpiece like a Bobby the Brain Heenan. However, he is iconic. I mean, he managed some of the better people that have ever gone through the WWE, i.e., Andre the Giant. And for what it's worth, I know that he's an inspiration to a lot of current managers. Like, for example, there is Paul Heyman. I think that if anything can be said, it's just that Bobby Heenan was Paul Heyman before Paul Heyman, except maybe a little controversial because those were just the times. It's a shame that he passed. He had been battling illness for a long time now, so it shouldn't really come as a surprise to a lot of people. And his contributions will be missed, but forever memorialized in all of the WWE content. I'm part of the network, by the way. I pay my $9.99.
How's that 999 going for you? Is it good?
I just watch the events. It's kind of a pain in the ass. I mean, the you can't watch the weekly events as they happen. You have to wait like 3 weeks to catch up on Raw. It's a pain. So you watch the. It's like when I moved from New York to Santo Domingo, right? I was up to date, right? It just Attitude Era had just started. I moved to Santo Domingo. First of all, there was months without it. Then when it came, it was like 7 months behind. Then when all the cool stuff that I was reading about happened, then they decided to fast forward and make it like a week behind. And I'm like, oh, this is just a mess.
And the pay-per-views were free, but there were only 2 hours instead of 3. I remember that. They'd cut the first hour, like, why is all that blood on the and it took me like a year to figure that out. I felt like such an asshole. That was so messed up. Oh man.
I wanna give a quick shout out to Antena Latina for allowing us to watch the pay-per-view for free. Thank you very much, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? I remember what happened. I think it was around the time of the Vince McMahon Kiss My Ass Club. I think they fast-forwarded through all that because we never saw that.
Shot, too.
We never saw that.
The share shot. A lot of them.
No, but what I mean is they skipped that whole chunk of program. They're like, oh, no, wait, we can't be that far behind, and Dominicans are not going to buy this. So let's just skip ahead, and all of a sudden you see Hogan on TV. You're like, wait, huh? NWO.
Yeah.
It was around that time, right? Kevin Nash coming back? Yeah.
The Attitude Era was something like 97 and 2000, and they kind of fast forwarded through a whole bunch of that stuff. A lot of, like, all of a sudden, we don't have Rock and Austin on TV, and Mick Foley's doing main events with Triple H, and you're just like, what the hell? When did Mick Foley get involved in this?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's the same shock that the people at WCW got when some announcer tried to spoil the news. When oh my God, Mankind is now the world heavyweight champion at WWE. Everybody just tuned out and went to WWE to check out.
Well, that's gonna put a lot of butts in seats. Really?
Yeah.
He won a championship?
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's because they. What was it? WCW did it live, but WWE filmed ahead. I think that's how it went.
Yeah. That's how they.
That's how they torpedoed the programming until then. Good job.
And shot themselves in the foot in the same thing.
Well, they did a few other things around that time to do that, but yeah, that was big.
All right, fantastic. Well, Vic, I think I've had you here longer than I expected, man. Tell people once again where they can find you and to look forward to seeing you again on the Unofficial Commentators when we talk the preview for the big MSG card.
Yeah, once again, I'm on Twitter at Vic M. Rodriguez, and I'm also available at bloodyelbow.com. We're actually going to be doing a Bellator preview for this Saturday's event, so I'm probably going to be wearing the same shirt. And yeah, I got a lot of other fun things coming down the pipe, so just stay tuned. And yeah, if you follow me on Twitter, I'll keep you apprised of all that.
I got some fun stuff coming down the pipe.
Yeah, I bet you do. And I want to thank you guys again for having me on, man. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, the pleasure is all ours, man. Thank you very much.
Next time, I'll make sure that Dago isn't as terrible as today. He really sucked.
Wow. He's all right. He's all right. I know him from way back. It's okay. It's fine.
Hey, excellent friend. Horrible interviewer. What the hell are you doing?
Wow.
This is why I'm the on-camera talent. Get the hell out of here, Dago. All right, Vic, thank you very much. Everyone else, tune in to the Unofficial Commentators. We're on YouTube. We're on Soundcloud. You can find us on Facebook. Follow Unofficial Commentators on Instagram. We're UC_podcast on Twitter. You know where to follow Vic. Follow Dago if you have nothing else to do. And till next week. Thank you, guys.
Bye now.